Hey, what's up? It's me, Lex, back at you with another Pathfinder video. Today I'm going to be covering the Exemplar, and I know that in the past I've had kind of a dedication to using only common options in my class overviews, but I think that it's more than fair to cover Exemplar, because Exemplar is blanket allowed in Pathfinder Society, and Pathfinder Society is actually kind of more where I draw what I consider allowable from than just purely the rarity options. And besides, it's an interesting class that I'd like to cover. So, first things first, the basic summary of the Exemplar class is you are essentially a sort of very versatile martial. Rather than having a lot of dedicated maneuvers that do like a lot of damage, or that allow you to strike several times, or that give you, for example, various skill-related effects like combat grab, Exemplar gives you icons. Icons come with Imminence, which is a passive ability. You can have a Divine Spark in a single icon at a time, and whenever you do, you also benefit from its Imminence ability. Additionally, when it has your Divine Spark in it, you can use its Transcendence action, which is usually a buffed up version of an action that you were normally going to take, or a maneuver kind of equivalent to a feat. And then the action occurs, and your Divine Spark moves to a different icon. So for example here with Barrow's Edge, if your Divine Spark is in it, you deal 1 additional spirit damage per weapon damage die to creatures you strike, and that increases to 3 damage per weapon damage die if the creature is below half of its maximum HP. It also rattles strongly when an enemy is below half hit points when the creature is within your weapon's reach, so that you can, even if your game master isn't particularly generous with that kind of information, you will automatically know. And then its Transcendence effect, which is the action that you can take that moves your Divine Spark to a different icon, is Drink of My Foes. As a single action, if your last action was a successful strike with the Barrow's Edge, then you regain hit points equal to half the damage dealt. And as you can imagine, that could be quite good with a nice critical hit. So, now that we understand what an icon is, the Exemplar is a class based around medium armor and martial weapon proficiency and 10 hit points plus your constitution modifier. And they take advantage of having 3 of these icons, which they then add on to or supplement with some feats. And alongside that, they can get some additional feats as part of certain icons, and they take advantage of all of that to be a very versatile force on the battlefield. Now, the 3 examples that I have today are Wring, the level 2 Exemplar, Inquiry, the level 5 Exemplar, and Fall to the Ground, the level 7 Exemplar. We're going to be starting with Wring here. Wring is a Nephilim, a battle-blooded Nephilim, which gives Wring training in Intimidation and the Intimidating Glare skill feat at level 1 to kind of represent being chosen by Valkyries as a battle blood. Wring's icon choices are Barrow's Edge, which I've already gone over. Additional damage that increases when your opponent is below half hit points, and a Transcendence ability that allows you to regain some vitality if your last action was a successful strike. Next up is Eye-Catching Spot. This is imbued on the face, and it makes foes distracted when they look at you, which imposes a -1 circumstance penalty to melee attack rolls against you. Its Imminence ability is a 2-action activity with the mental, visual, and emotion traits and concentrate that focuses your attention on a creature within 30 feet and overwhelms them. They must succeed at a will save against your class DC or be fascinated by you until the start of your next turn. And the fascination ends if you use a hostile action against them, but not if you use a hostile action against its allies. So this makes for a very solid way to try to lock down a caster, for example. Fascinated is often a condition that you can struggle to take advantage of, but it is very strong if you are able to get it. This can prevent a caster from targeting your teammates entirely if you can pull this off. And then the last icon that Wring begins with is Fetching Bangles. It's some worn bracers. Its imminence gives you a 10-foot aura that makes it so that enemies in the aura attempting to move away from you must succeed at a will save against your class DC or have their move action be disrupted. And then its Transcendence ability is Embrace of Destiny. Choose an enemy within 20 feet of you. They must succeed at a will save against your class DC or be pulled directly toward you into an adjacent square. These are generally just some very solid lockdown abilities. You can pull things in and prevent them from getting away. The one struggle that I do find with Exemplar, and something you're going to want to consider, is that class DC is, as well as normal spell casting, not balanced around the assumption that things will fail the save very often unless they're lower level than you, in which case then you can start to rely on it a bit more, but you might want to focus more on things that have success effects if you're going up against foes of equal or greater strength. Now, Wring also grabs the Vow of Mortal Defiance class feat at level 1. It prerequisites that you are not sanctified with the holy or unholy trait, and it allows you to, as an action, swear a vow to defeat one creature within 60 feet that does have the holy or unholy trait, and then the first time each round you deal damage to that creature, you deal an additional d6 of spirit damage. And you can't use Mortal Defiance again until either you or the target is defeated, flees, or the encounter ends. This is one of my favorite feats from Exemplar. It gives you the ability to embody something that I didn't think the class would make particular agreement with. One thing that I tend to avoid when talking about Exemplar, both in this video and in my own uses, is the kind of divine, almost demigod theming that it has. That's just not something that appeals super strongly to me, but I do think that the class has plenty of ability to embody other types of flavor. And when I say that, what I'm talking about in particular is, well, for example, Wring here has a Barrow's Edge Scythe, an eye-catching spot, and Fetching Bangles. I've created sort of like a Grim Reaper here, and when we get to level 2, we see as well Red Gold Mortality. This is one of the icon feats, so you imbue it onto a weapon icon. This is going on to the Barrow's Edge. It gives it an additional imminence effect, so just passively when wielding it with a Divine Spark in it. When you successfully damage an enemy with the icon, a marking appears around the wound, painted in the red of mortal blood and the gold of divine ichor. When the target would regain hit points, it must attempt a will save against your class DC to determine the effects, and then the marking fades. Otherwise, it fades after a minute. And so even on, on a success, they regain full HP, but on a failure, they regain only half, and on a critical failure, they regain none. Again, this is going to struggle from the fact that if you're facing foes that are equal or stronger than you, the expectation is generally going to be that they succeed, and this does nothing, but it's a passive effect that could lock down some healing. And it adds to the sort of Reaper theming that I have here. One thing to touch on before we move on to our next Exemplar here. When you're picking your icons, it is a decent idea to consider sort of what loops you could build yourself into. Because your icons move your Divine Spark around, there is an action, Shift Imminence, where once per round, as a single action, as well as a free action when you roll initiative, you can shift your Divine Spark into an icon of your choice. However, that is an extra action that you don't have to be spending if you have multiple good choices. So here for Wring, Barrow's Edge, obviously the Transcendence here, because it has a requirement of needing to succeed on a strike to be able to switch over to anything else, even though it does have a very good effect. If there were a feat that I could pick up later, for example, there is Steel on Steel. This adds a Transcendence effect to the icon that you imbue it onto. And I might consider adding something like that onto Barrow's Edge, so that then, rather than having to use Shift Imminence, which does nothing but move the Divine Spark, I could use that ability on my Barrow's Edge to move the spark over to, say, eye-catching spots that next round I can attempt to fascinate someone, or the Fetching Bangles where next round I can attempt to pull someone in. Considerations like that. You want to be thinking about not only what your icon can do for you, but how it can get you to your other icons. Now we're going to move on to my level 5 exemplar here, Inquiry. The first exemplar, Wring, was a Charisma exemplar. Inquiry is an Intelligence exemplar. A gnome, to be specific, a gnome with imprecise sense from being a sensate gnome. And the Animal Accomplice feat for a familiar. I won't go too much into the use of familiars, but there's a lot you can do with them. Specifically, with this, I would probably give the familiar Skilled in Arcana, and then give the familiar, I believe it's called Second Opinion. There we go. And so this gives you automatic aid on your Arcana checks, which means recall knowledge. Familiars have a lot going on. Again, I won't get super into it. Now, for the class itself, Inquiry here has Hands of the Wildling. This is a weapon icon used on a melee freehand weapon or unarmed strike. It increases the damage by dealing an additional 1 spirit splash damage per weapon damage die with your strikes that you are immune to. It's unclear whether or not this does, whether or not this adds the splash trait to the action and causes you to deal damage even on a miss. But regardless, on a hit, you will definitely be dealing some splash damage to the creature and all surrounding creatures to them. And you are immune to this splash damage. It also has the Feral Swing Transcendence effect, which causes you to lash out in front of you. Everything in a 15-foot cone succeeds at a basic reflex save against your class DC, or takes spirit damage equal to a normal strike damage with the icon. And you can choose to swing with Abandon, which imposes a -2 circ penalty, or bonus, I suppose, it's a penalty, to enemies' saving throws, but causes you to become off guard until the start of your next turn. That -2 can do a lot to making this be a failure, but I would note that it is something you should be careful of here, that this is kind of strangely worded here. Or it's difficult to use because it's a 15-foot cone, which is already kind of in melee range. 15-foot cone, however, is going to be great for doing area damage or for catching several foes. But notably here, and the thing that I think it'll be most useful for, is that because this doesn't have the attack trait, you can strike once and then use Feral Swing if you have 3 actions on your turn and you're already set up in range, just to get some extra damage out there, and switch over to another icon. Speaking of other icons, Horn of Plenty is the second one here. It is a 1 bulk container that you wear on your body, and it can store up to 1 bulk of potions and elixirs. It can't be opened other than its Imminence and Transcendence abilities, and each day during daily prep, it produces a temporary elixir of life, but you can choose to have it make a different elixir or potion as long as you have the formula for it. And it must be your level or lower. And it increases to 2 items at 8th level and 3 at 16th level. You choose them individually, and they disappear every day, as well as any of their remaining effects, and they have no value. Horn of Plenty is a great item for alchemists if they pick it up through the Exemplar multi-class, but it's also great for Exemplar, and a very easy thing to flavor as well, because it can be any potion or any elixir. The Imminence ability allows you to interact to draw a consumable and drink it as a single action, and no one can enter it unless the Imminence is active, and even when it is, only people you want to be able to enter it can open it. As for the Transcendence effect, as a single action, you interact to draw a consumable from the horn, then interact to drink it, and rather than nourishing yourself, its effects are transferred to a willing ally within 60 feet as if they had consumed it, and if it restores hit points, you can choose to divide it between yourself and them freely. So, a lot of very nice support stuff here. And the Feed the Masses is pretty easy to pull off, but will notably require you to have something in the horn. So keep that one in mind. And then finally, Pelt of the Beast is a worn cloak or belt. During your daily prep, choose cold, electricity, fire, poison, or sonic damage. And then passively, when your spark is in it, you gain resistance equal to half your level to the damage type the pelt is attuned to, and treat environmental cold and heat effects as 1 step less severe. And then you have the Transcendence effect, Survive the Wilds, where you wrap the pelt tighter around yourself. You can choose the damage type that the pelt is attuned to. You can change it to another one. Then it shines gold, drawing the offending energies in. Until the start of your next turn, the shine creates an aura in a 15-foot emanation, which gives you and all allies within it a +2 circumstance bonus to AC and saving throws against effects with that trait. And so this kind of is making up for the fact that when you use the Transcendence effect, you will be shifting away from the Eminence. You'll have to come back to it to get the resistance. But getting half resistance to many different types of energy damage and having the ability to change it on the fly to match is quite nice. It's very nice adaptation. Now, Inquiry here. Now that I've gone over the icons, I can tell you the sort of flavor that I've gone for. Inquiry here, as an intelligence alchemist, is kind of built as sort of an artificer. Hands of the Wildling on a gauntlet bow means that you can make melee strikes, you can shoot your crossbow bolts, or you can sort of do this flurry or blast in front of you. I consider it to be a blast just for fun. The Horn of Plenty can be easily reflavored with the potions and elixirs to be little gadgets that you throw out for Feed the Masses up to 60 feet range, or just use yourself for the Imminence. And Pelt of the Beast is just some adaptive armor that you can kind of modify as you go along. Now for the class feats. Inquiry here has Energized Spark. This is a really good one at level 1 that I think a lot of people are probably going to be interested in taking multiple times. Energized Spark allows you to choose one of the following traits: air, cold, earth, electricity, fire, metal, poison, sonic, vitality, void, water, or wood. And then whenever your exemplar abilities deal spirit damage, you can instead cause them to gain the trait and deal their corresponding damage type. And so each of those that isn't a damage type has one, like air with slashing. And you can take it as many times as you would like. And this gives you, for the Artificer here, sort of this toolbox of damage types to pull from and to make up little stories about as you use your actions. For example, we start off with electricity here. At level 2, we take it again for fire. And we also take trick magic item just to be able to take advantage of our arcana proficiency and nature, occultism, religion. At level 3, we grab gnome obsession. This allows you to choose a additional lore category, gain assurance for that chosen lore, and you can retrain the lore with a single day of downtime. It's a very nice gnome feat, and it fits very well here. More notably, though, now that we're level 3, you can get introduced to another part of the Exemplar's kit, the epithet. Epithets are additional effects that get added on to whenever you use a Transcendence ability. You can only ever use a single epithet, and you get 3 of them as you level up. Right here, you're offered the choice between the brave, the cunning, the deft, the mournful, the proud, or the radiant. And we're going for the mournful here. You become trained in diplomacy, and after you spark Transcendence, your act resonates with bittersweet poignancy, making one enemy of your choice within 30 feet who witness the act dazzled as tears or memories dance in their eyes. It's an emotion and mental effect. They remain dazzled until the start of your next turn, and then they are temporarily immune for 10 minutes. That can be very easily flavored into some sort of blinding powder or blinding flash, something like that. And so that's why it's selected for Inquiry here. At level 4, Steel on Steel for the Ringing Challenge ability. It's added on to a melee weapon icon or worn icon made of metal, stone, or hard material that allows you to, as a 2-action activity, either hit against it with something or the ground, and it emits a shockwave in a 30-foot cone that deals 1d4 spirit damage, which can be changed with energized spark, and 1d4 sonic damage, and a 30-foot cone or 15-foot emanation with a basic fortitude save. If they critically fail, they become deafened for a minute. And then at 6th level and every 2 levels thereafter, so improving at the same rate as a spell, it deals an additional d4 spirit damage and d4 sonic damage. And so with 16 levels to level 20, that gets you 8 more d4s of each type for a total of 18 d4 total damage. And the ability to change that around with Energized Spark so that you can be doing whatever damage type you'd like on a basic save, potentially hitting some weaknesses, real great. And then we're applying Steel on Steel to whichever of these you think it fits best on. My personal choice is Horn of Plenty there, because Hands of the Wildling can do a 15-foot cone AoE whenever, and Pelt of the Beast can do Survive the Wilds whenever, but Horn of Plenty has a chance to get locked onto it with Feed the Masses. And again, you can shift Eminence with an action, but that's an action that isn't doing anything on its own. And so having the ability to switch back and forth between Hands of the Wildling and Horn of Plenty as you do a lot of damage, moving over to Pelt of the Beast for resistance, using Horn of Plenty for the buffing effects that it has. It's a great loop, and it's very Artificer-like. We also grab Recognize Spell. Just again, with all that intelligence, we can be trained in everything, we can recognize spells. And at level 5, we grab Eclectic Obsession. This is another gnome feat that gives you, as a single action, become trained in one lore skill of your choice for 10 minutes or until you critically fail a check with that skill. You can do that once per day. Now, we're finally going to move to the last exemplar here, Fall to the Ground, level 7 exemplar. This is a dexterity and wisdom focused exemplar, kind of more nature themed here. They are a goblin, a tree dweller goblin in particular. As long as you're in a forest or jungle, you have a bonus to stealth checks to hide and sneak, survival checks to subsist, and survival DC to cover tracks. The very sneaky ancestry feat, allowing you to move 5 feet farther when you sneak up to your speed, and as long as you continue to use sneak and succeed at your check, you don't need cover until the end of your turn. We're going to start out with the Shadow Sheath icon. This is a holster or sheath shaped for a one-handed thrown weapon of light bulk or less, which I have to double check. Yes, my weapon does qualify. You can spend 1 minute to load a weapon meeting its usage requirements into the sheath, which is hidden somewhere on your person. As long as the shadow sheath is on your person, you can interact to draw an exact copy of the weapon from thin air, retaining the runes and abilities of the hidden weapon, though if you use any limited use abilities like talismans or activations with a frequency limit, they count against the weapon's normal usages, and a copy disappears shortly after leaving your hand or being used for a thrown strike. Its imminence effect allows you to interact to draw a weapon from it as a free action, and your strikes with a weapon produced from the Shadow Sheath deal 2 additional spirit damage per weapon damage die, or 3 per die if the target is off guard. And finally, its Transcendence effect is Liar's Hidden Blade. Its requirement is your previous action was an unsuccessful strike with a weapon from the Shadow Sheath, and the effect is that you kind of were using the first ones as a distraction, and so you get an extra one for a single action, interact to draw another weapon, then strike at the same multiple attack penalty as the unsuccessful attack, and the opponent is off guard to it. This strike then counts towards your multiple attack penalty as normal, and after it resolves, you can interact to draw another weapon from the Shadow Sheath. As the Transcendence is going away, that'll ensure that you still have one in your hands. Very flavorful. It's a nice way to ensure that you can use thrown weapons very consistently. Next up, we have Mirrored Aegis. Mirrored Aegis is applied onto any shield, and it causes you to have an aura for the passive effect, a 15-foot emanation that gives you and all allies within a +1 status bonus to AC. And if your Divine Spark is in the Mirrored Aegis for 10 minutes, the shield is restored to full hit points. So, in particular, if you're using a shield, this means that you don't have to worry about its upkeep. The Transcendence ability is Raise the Walls. This is an action, and it's a very interesting one to me. You raise the Mirrored Aegis, so you use the Raise a Shield action, which summons ethereal shields that surround you and one ally of your choice within 15 feet in a tortoise shield formation. Both you and they gain a +1 status bonus to AC, reflex saves, and any save against a Force, Spirit, Vitality, or Void effect, and that lasts for a minute. Mirrored Aegis, for this reason, is a really good one to lead off in a combat with. Have your Divine Spark in your shield, and then use Raise the Walls at the start of combat to give yourself and an ally an AC buff, typically your other frontliner, and then you don't really need to switch back to it, because the aura is only giving you a bonus to AC, which you already have. If you have additional teammates that you want to be able to benefit, then of course you can switch back to it to regain the aura, but it's a rare case where the imminence isn't really doing a whole lot for you other than like during exploration mode it's giving you a passive bonus. And then the final icon here is Victor's Wreath. This is actually kind of a problematic icon, just it's a little abusable. I'll go over that in a second here though. Its imminence ability gives you and all allies in a 15-foot emanation a +1 status bonus to attack rolls. So it's the attack counterpart to the Mirrored Aegis. And then its Transcendence effect is 1 moment till glory. As a single action, each ally in your aura, so a 15-foot emanation, can immediately attempt a new saving throw with a +2 status bonus against one ongoing negative effect or condition currently affecting them, even if that effect would not normally allow a new saving throw. The problematic part here is just that it doesn't have any sort of lockout. It's not actually that much of an issue in combat, as far as like allowing for another single save and taking multiple actions, but as soon as you're out of combat in particular, because this doesn't have any sort of immunity timeout or usage limitation, it means that any sort of attrition-based gameplay that is relying on negative effects or conditions that used a saving throw at any point in their affliction process just can't do anything anymore. And that's I would recommend making it so that this can only be used against a single affliction once per day or something like that. Just add some text like the affliction then becomes immune to this ability for 24 hours. Something like that. You can lower it, of course, or ignore it entirely if that isn't the sort of thing you're interested in. But it is very much so one of the few things with Exemplar that is actually an issue, and it kind of steps on the toes of other classes. Previously, Alchemist was the best at this sort of thing. They could make their counteracting elixirs. And I thought that even that was a little bit overboard, because you could just sit there and attempt to counteract something twice every 10 minutes with no resource drain. Anyways, I digress. Just keep that in mind. Fall to the Ground here is kind of meant to be a survivalist, and so the weapon of choice here in the Shadow Sheath is a bola. In particular, this is useful for the ability to make a ranged trip. You can trip with the athletics skill in the weapon's first range increment, though doing so you suffer a -2 circumstance penalty, but you gain the item bonus to attack rolls as a bonus to the check. I also am realizing that I did not actually put athletics training onto this character, but that's easy enough to resolve. So having something like this, where you have utility and combat use in the Shadow Sheath, is a nice way to kind of supplement it. And particularly with Liar's Hidden Blade and the big damage bonus that you gain from the Imminence effect, you don't need to worry too much about the specific weapon that you choose. Fall to the Ground here has the Energized Spark class feat at level 1 with the poison damage type. I wouldn't actually recommend taking the poison damage type, funnily enough. I just think that it's very thematic for the character. At level 2, Hurl at the Horizon either gives a weapon the thrown 15-foot trait or increases the thrown distance by 10 feet if it already has the thrown trait. Technically, this is imbued into a thrown or melee weapon icon, which the sheath is a sheath that you put normal weapons into. So it'll depend on your game master if you're allowed to take this or not. I would allow it in my games just because it seems like a small leap to make for a lot of fun. But if not, grab Energized Spark again for some additional damage types. Slippery Prey to prevent our character from getting caught here too badly. And we're also going to move that skill training over to Athletics. Fleet at level 3, just for some additional speed. We're kind of speedy, dashing between cover, dashing across rooftops, jumping, etc. The Cunning Epithet, which causes you to become trained in deception, and after you spark Transcendence, you can either create a diversion or feint as a free action. And so this will allow us to use Create a Diversion to off-guard enemies at range every so often for free, so that we can both have a higher chance to hit and get some additional damage from our Shadow Sheath. At level 4, we're going to grab Steel on Steel so that we can... one moment. There we go. We're going to grab Steel on Steel and toss it onto probably the Victor's Wreath so that the Shadow Sheath will be our default. We're typically sticking to it. But whenever we miss our first strike and we have the extra actions to do so, we'll use Liar's Hidden Blade, shift over to the Victor's Wreath, and then we can switch back by doing some additional damage. In this case, this would be something like we have a crown that we smack our mirrored Aegis against to produce the effect required for Steel on Steel, the Ringing Challenge, to do the cone or emanation of sonic damage. We also grab Quiet Allies because we are focused on stealth. At level 5, we gain the Twitchy Goblin Feat. It gives you a bonus to AC and saves against hazards and to all initiative rolls, and the bonus increases if anyone uses Deception or Diplomacy for initiative on your opponent's side. At level 6, we pick up Binding Serpent's Celestial Arrow. Another example of something that I allow, even though technically the Shadow Sheath is the sheath itself and not the weapons within it. So this may depend on your game master, but if you are able to take it, you can imbue it on, and it gives you an additional Transcendence effect, Coiling Serpents, where for 2 actions you make a ranged strike, so in this case a thrown strike, and if the strike hits, the target must succeed at a reflex save against your class DC, or the arrow transforms into a multitude of ethereal snakes that coil around the target, immobilizing them until they escape. That's just a lot of fun, I find. If you are not able to get that, then I would recommend something like Flow of War to become quickened, or just more energized spark, so that you have as much versatility and damage types as possible, because then you can be hitting weaknesses, bypassing resistances, etc. And finally, at level 7, we're going to grab Swift Sneak for a general feat, and we grab a second epithet. As you might have noticed, the first epithet gives you a skill training and an epithet effect. The second epithet choice gives you your choice of a new feat, as well as an epithet effect and a crit spec effect. There are Born of the Bones of the Earth, Dancer in the Seasons, Of Verse Unbroken, Peerless Under Heaven, Restless as the Tide, and Whose Cry is Thunder. In this case, we're going for Dancer in the Seasons. Dancer in the Seasons gives you the Energized Spark feat for your choice of Cold, Fire, Void, or Wood. It's limited to those 4 choices instead of the full list. And when you critically succeed on a strike, so replacing your crit spec effect, you can step as a free action in a whirl of leaves, snow, blossoms, or shimmering heat. And then the season changes, rotating each time you use the ability, so that's a nice little flavor tidbit. And then finally, when you spark Transcendence, so this is the epithet effect, you gain temporary hit points equal to half your level as you're reinvigorated by the changing of the seasons. These last until the start of your next turn. And so, again, you can only have one epithet effect on any given Transcendence. So you could either create a diversion or faint as a free action, or gain temporary hit points equal to half your level. Not both. And then the ability to step as a free action when you critically hit replaces the normal critical specialization for your weapon. So, I think that Exemplar is a lot better than I thought I was going to be rating it. Not necessarily because I thought that it was going to be poorly designed or poorly balanced, but just because it was a class identity that I didn't find particularly appealing at the pitch, or even necessarily during the playtest, because I didn't dedicate a lot of time to it. But I think it's really surprised me now that I've built some, I've used some, I've played alongside a few now as well, and I think Exemplar is a solid class. The only thing that I would definitely like is some little touch-ups on certain wording choices, like One Moment Till Glory's repeatable, kind of abusable effect. I'd love more icons, and more than anything, I would love more competition between the low-level feats. The low-level feats, if you haven't noticed, have been very similar. It's either Energized Spark to gain some damage versatility. Sanctified Soul, which sanctifies you and adds the holy or unholy trait to your strikes and the spirit damage that you deal. Twin Stars, which allows you to split a one-handed weapon icon into 2 copies of itself. They both gain the twin trait. They just have a mirrored feature on each other, so they look cool. And you can fuse them into one another or split them apart again as an interact action. And Vow of Mortal Defiance, which I already went over, allows you to sort of swear vengeance on a holy or unholy creature to deal some extra damage. There's not a whole ton of competition here, I find, personally, and even when we move into the second level feats, there's not a whole ton of them, with Hurl at the Horizon, Leap the Falls for powerful leap and quick jump in an icon, Lightning Swap to stow any number of items in your hands, then draw up to 2 weapons or a shield and a weapon, and Red Gold Mortality for some passive sort of healing shutdown. Healing isn't very common, though it will of course be very useful when this does come up. What I would really like to see from Exemplar is just more options. I would love more support for a lot of the newer classes that have been coming out. For example, Kineticist. I still think that Monogate Kineticist struggles with an identity problem, and more specifically in that most Monogate Kineticists are going to be built almost identically as they level up, I feel. And I think Exemplar here, well, it has a lot of versatility in having so many icon choices. I think that its feats could use a little more breadth. But as far as the class itself goes, I hope I've demonstrated here with Wring's sort of just being a anti-deity Grim Reaper icon, Inquiry being this sort of gadgety Artificer, and Fall to the Ground being this sort of jungling survivalist, that I've been able to demonstrate Exemplar does still have a super wide berth of identities that you can assign to it, and particularly if you have a little bit of help from your game master, maybe you reflavor some of the abilities to be arcane for the Artificer or primal for the survivalist here. Not necessary at all, but just something to think about. I was very happy with the flavorability and diversity of exemplars that you can create because of the icons being not too tied to the divine nature of the class. Anyways, that's going to be it from me today. So, thank you for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video. Subscribe if you would like to see more. Toss me a few bucks on coffee if you would like to keep the channel running or join the community Discord. And I will see you all next time. See ya. See ya. Thank you to my coffee members donating at the few bucks support monthly tier: Sac D, Phoenix FH, and Kizo. You're what keeps this channel running. I really appreciate it.